Hi, I'm back, and this time I'm back with kind of an intermediate lesson on how to create a small video on a still image. Now, if you haven't watched the first one, the basics, then go ahead and watch the first tutorial on doing the basics. So it's just a very simple scan. This one, it's not that it's harder, we're just going to add a few more steps, a few more things that make it look a little bit more professional in appearance. So let's get started. And you need to watch that first one if you haven't, because I'm going to breeze through the information that we did in the first video so that we don't repeat it over and over again. So I'm going to kind of breeze through the old stuff and then give you more explanation on the new stuff. So let's get going now. The first thing I need to do is this will be the image we're working with, and it may look familiar because it was in the basics video, but we need to open a new document. So in Photoshop, I'm going to go up to File, New. We get a window. We're going to create a new document. So we're going to come over to Film and Video, HDTV 1080p. I would like to title this, and so I'm going to type in a title, Intermediate Video Tutorial. Oops. And the other thing I want to do is I want to change the color of the background to black. So I'm going to go ahead and do that because we will see it a little bit at the end of the video. So I'm going to go ahead and create it. It sets up a new document. I don't need these guidelines right now, so I'm going to go ahead and hide them by doing a Command or Control H, hides them. And we'll come back to having those show later, but right now they're hidden. So the next thing I want to do is I want to bring my image into this video document. So I'm going to go over to my tab with my image in it. I'm going to do a Command or Control A to select it. I'm going to do a Command or Control C to copy it. Now I'll move back over to my video document and I'm going to paste it. So Command or Control V. It pastes it in, and it's quite large. It's larger than our document is. So I can't see anything but the sky. So I need to transform that and make it smaller. So I'm going to do a Command or Control T for the transform tool. I can only see this one little handle, and I want to see them all. So I'm going to do a Command 0 so that I can back out so I can see what I'm doing. I'm going to grab this bottom corner and I'm going to pull it up and in until it gets kind of closer to what I may want. And I may have done it about right or too far. We'll see. So I'm going to zoom in so we can all see better by doing Command plus 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 till it's large enough that I can see. And I want the sky maybe to show a little bit. This looks pretty decent. I'm not showing quite as much foreground as I would like, so I'm going to continue to bring this in until I get about the amount of picture I want to see. There's about the amount of sky, and I like the amount of foreground. That looks pretty good right there. So the next thing I want to do is I want to make sure that my mountain stays at about this point in my image, so from the top. So I want to move it now to the right so I can see the left side of the frame of the picture. And I don't want to veer up and down. I want to make sure it stays at about this level as I go across. So if I hold the Shift key down, I'm going to shift and pull it across till I get over to the left side of the image. And I don't think I need to go all the way to the side because I don't think that has a whole lot of interest in it. So I'm going to stop it about right there. And when I'm happy with it, I'm going to go ahead and accept it. So I'm going to hit the check mark up at the top, or I could hit the Enter or Return key, and it will process and do that. Now I'm going to zoom in so that we have a closer view, so you have a better shot. So Command plus 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 till I get up there. Now what I want to do is I'm going to make this a smart object and rename it. So let's rename it by double clicking, and I'm just going to say the Tetons. So I'll say Tetons. It'll just label it and keep us organized. On the right side of the name, I'm just going to, within this layer, I'm going to right click, find Convert to Smart Object, and it has. That way, if we decide we need to go in and do a little bit more editing on our image, we can do that without disrupting our timeline or our video here. So we can go in, do the adjustment, come back. So now that we have that done, let's go ahead and look down here. We're going to create video timeline. Now it's opened our image up. So, and you can see it's titled. So the next thing I want to do, and I'll explain what I envision for this little video, is I would like to start out with a title screen, fade into our movie, do some panning across to about the middle. Then I'm going to zoom in a little larger, so our mountain's a little bit bigger in the center, zoom back out, continue to pan across to the right side of the image. Once we get there, then we'll zoom all the way out so that we can see the entire picture at one time. We'll sit there and let it show us that until we fade out at the end, and we're going to add a track of music. Now I can't get all that in one video very easily, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through, I'm going to explain the title section of this video, and then once we get the title in place, we're going to pause and we're going to come back to a part 2, and that's when I'll explain how you drop in the keystone markers for the picture itself. And then once we get that in place, we'll pause again, go to a part 3, and then I will add the music track as our part 3 to this one intermediate tutorial. So now you know the process that we're going to go through. So let's get started. I envision my title screen being backed up with a black background. So the first thing I need to do is make a black background. I'm going to go down here, create a new layer, and it's empty, so I need to go up to Edit, Fill, and I want to fill it with black. It happens to be there. If it's not, you can click on it and select black. We're going to say OK. You'll notice it filled it. It's now covering my image. I can't see it because it's sitting on top of it. No problem. We'll come back to that later. Now I want to do the title. So I'm going to type in the title that I need. So I need to get my text tool. So that's either hitting the letter T on the keyboard or coming over the toolbar and finding the T. And now that I have it, I also need to bring my guidelines back up because I would like to show a center guideline so I can line my text up. So I'm going to do a Command H to unhide that. And if you'll notice, my document is about 26.5 inches wide. So my center will be at about 13.25. So if I come over to the rulers, and if you don't have a ruler showing on yours, you need the ruler to do this, to draw out a guideline. So you're going to go to View, down here to Rulers, and if you don't have a ruler showing, that means that it's unchecked. So you'll want to click on that so that it shows. A shortcut would be to do a Command or Control R. And my rulers are showing, so I'm going to bring my cursor just over the edge of the ruler, and you'll notice that the cursor changes to an arrow. At this point, I'm going to click and drag towards the center, and that will drag out a line. Again, you have to have that ruler showing so you can drag out a line. And I'm going to pull it across, and you can see an amount clicking up as we go across, and I want it to be about 13.25, so that's 13.25. So right in there is about right. I'm going to release it. I'm going to zoom out slightly. And now I want to type the title on here. So I'm going to put my cursor right on this line, this center line, because I'm at a center justified. That means it's going to grow out from the center as I type. So I'm going to click on that. And now I need to make sure I have the text that I want, or the font, excuse me. And I don't think I want this one for this main text. I want to click on it, and I'm going to go down and I'm going to find Bodani 72 small caps. That means it's large and small caps is what I'm getting. Now it's fairly small in my frame, so I want to make it larger. So there's some double T's up here to the left of the point size. I'm going to click on that and just drag it to the right, and you'll see the numbers growing. And I'm thinking that that looks pretty good. If it's not right when we get done typing the text in, we can adjust it larger or smaller. And right here it says I'm going to type in white, and that is what I wanted to type with, was white. So we're good to go on that. So I'm just going to type in the Tetons. Whoops, I was going to do the Grand Tetons. Let's do that. Call it by its name. And once you are happy with your spelling, you can go ahead and use the check mark to accept this text as is. Now I want 2 lines of text, but if I were to do it like I hit the return key, it would give me a second line. However, I want them to be independent of each other because I'm going to use different fonts and different sizes, and I want to be able to move them around so I can get my spacing better. I find that it's just easiest to do it on 2 different lines. I could certainly do them within the same line, but I choose not to for this case. So I'm going to hit the check mark at the top. Like I said, if you hit the enter for text, it just takes you to the next line. So that won't work. You do have to go up there and use that check mark. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is give it a subtitle. So again, I'm going to go on that center line. I'm going to click, which will give me another set of text. And it remembers what I did last time. Well, this time I want to go smaller, and I'm going to use a different, less bold type font. So I'm going to go back to my arrow, and I'm going to use Georgia this time. And let's downsize that significantly. Let's go to about, we'll say 18, 20, somewhere in there. And I'm going to type in the next thing I want to say, and that is sunrise at Willow Creek. Okay, and so check your spelling. If it's good, then we're going to hit the check mark, and it's accepted now. And so the thing is, I would like to see how I like maybe that subtitle a little closer. So I'm going to hit my V key, make sure it's highlighted, and now I can use my arrow keys to move it up or down. And I'm going to move it up just a little bit. And then overall, I think the whole thing is close to center, but it's not quite there. So I want to move both lines of text at the same time so they stay consistent. I don't have to. I could move them independently. I do have them on 2 different lines. But let's go ahead and move them together. That way I don't have to redo my spacing with the 2 lines. So to do that, I just need to click on Command, click the title, and you'll notice now they're both highlighted. So now I can use as long as my move tool is on my cursor, I can use my arrows to nudge it down, and I'm just going to go until I eyeball it and think it's about in the center, which that looks pretty good. So once I'm happy with that, I will just unhook them so they don't move, and I'm going to go on to something else. But let's hide those text lines again. So I'm going to Command H to hide them. All right, those guidelines, excuse me. So now we need to lay out how we want this to look. So right now we can't see our image at all. We just see the title screen, which is fine. But in my mind, I envision the title screen going so for a few seconds, and it'll start out totally just black, and then I think I'm going to fade in the words, the Grand Tetons, and then I'll fade in sunrise at Willow Creek. Then I'll fade out sunrise at Willow Creek, fade out the Tetons, and then fade out the black and into the image. So let's figure out how to set that up. I find it easiest if I kind of pull my marker to about where I want, and then the image or the line will snap to what I want. And you'll notice too that I have my timeline is only at 5 seconds. So that's not going to be long enough. So I'm going to have to expand that first. So let's just expand our video. So we're out to about a minute, and I'm going to reduce my scale so I can do it a little bit easier. So I'm going to bring the scale down, hover over the end of my picture layer. I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to pull it to the right, and you'll notice a counter going up by the seconds. And so I'd like to get it to 1 second, and I didn't quite scale it down far enough to do that. So I can just simply scroll it over and continue to pull this out. And let's go to about a minute or a minute 10. See if I can get to a minute even. Yep, I'm going to have to scroll over a little farther. And I will continue to pull it out. And we'll go to about a minute 10. I'm not sure, I may need it a little longer than that. We can adjust it shorter or longer as we need it as we go. So we don't have to know up front how long that needs to stay. We can move it as we want to. So I think I would like the video or the image portion to come in a little later. So maybe at about 5 seconds. So if I pull my marker, this blue marker, over to 5 seconds, and I'm watching that little counter at the bottom, right down here, and it says 5 seconds, and you'll notice that it moves. I now have everything at 5 seconds at this end, but I want to pull my image over to 5, so it starts at 5 seconds. And the black right now is ending at 5 seconds. Well, if I show you what that looks like, and we can play that, this is what we get. It just is immediate, drastic change, and that doesn't look very good. So let's figure out how to alter it so that it does look better. I think the black needs to overlap the picture layers. So let's move our black to say 7 seconds. So let's move this back a little bit. Well, we'll go just slightly over 7 seconds. And let's pull our black all the way over to our line, and it's snapped in place. Now that looks pretty good. There's a little bit of an overlap, and if I show you what that looks like very quickly, you'll see that it's still rather abrupt. It goes from black to the picture, so you don't get any subtle shift. So how do we get a subtle shift? It would be to use a fade. So let's find out how to add a fade. We need to fade in the picture and fade out the black. So this little box up here at the top of the panel is a half black, half white square. You click on it and you get this fade option. And we're going to fade our image, say fade with black, and 4 seconds sounds like a good place to start. So let's click and we have to drag it into place. So I'm going to drag it to the front of the picture layer, and you'll notice it added a white triangle. So it's fading in. It's getting more picture, starts less, goes to more. Okay, so the black we need to fade out. It doesn't say fade out, we just need to fade it out. So we're going to go ahead and we could use a fade. We'll just try a fade and see if we want a fade or a fade with black. We'll try fade, and it doesn't need to be quite as long, I don't think. Let's try maybe 3 seconds. So as long as it's close to around, we'll say 3 seconds, that's pretty close, we'll be good with that. Let's drag and drop it at the end of our black. Now let's just look to see kind of what kind of idea we're getting of get an idea of what we're going to see. So here's how it moves. That's pretty smooth. I like what it's doing. So I think this is good. Now you can play with the amount of fade you have. This just seems to work nice. It feels good as it flows out and flows back in. It's not too short. It's not too long. I think it's pretty good. And I played around with it to find that amount of time that I liked. So you can do the same. So now let's figure out the word the Grand Tetons. I want it to come in first. Let's move our marker all the way back to the beginning by hitting this. So let's figure out if we want the Grand Tetons to start, say, maybe a second after the black. So the black will be visible for a full second, and then the words will start to fade in because we're going to add a fade to the front. And I think a second of black is probably enough. So let's pull this over. You can watch the counter go up till it gets to 1 second. Try to hit that. There we go. So now I want to pull the Grand Tetons over to 1 second. And if I release it now, it's at 1 second. And it ends, where does it end? It ends at about 4.5. And I would like it to say go a little closer to the end of the black. So let's move it to about, say, 6.5. So somewhere close to 6.5. We'll just stop right about there. And okay, so we will check that in a minute, but let's work with the subtitle now. And I would like that to maybe start a second after our title. So let's go to 2 seconds for that. So right there's 2. I'm going to go to the front and I'm going to just simply pull it back, click and drag it over. And so now we have that. And we would like it to go to, say, maybe 6 seconds because the Grand Tetons was going to go to 6.5. So let's move this to 6 or really close to it. Let's go to 6. And now we're going to pull this out so that it clicks up to 6. All right, so if I started this now, let's go to the beginning, and you'll see how it looks. It just is boom there, and then it fades off, but the words just flash off. So I'd like to see them fade out. I think it's just it feels better to me, but you can do whatever looks good to you. So let's do a fade, and we'll start with the Grand Tetons. Again, we go up to this little box, click on it, and let's say this is the title. So let's say we want to fade it in with black. So we'll start with black and then fade into it. And maybe we would like it to take about, we'll say 2.5 seconds to come in. So once we have that determined, you can change it after the fact. Let's click and drag it down, and we're going to drop it at the front end of the box. Again, you see the triangle. Now we need to fade out. Let's just try a fade, just a plain fade. And if we don't like it, we can change it, and maybe that's for about 2 seconds. So let's change our duration. You know, this is just whatever looks good to you. If you don't like the way this looks or the way you've put it in, then you can adjust it. Now the next one, the Sunrise at Willow Creek, let's say we want another fade. So we're going to we'll start with a fade with black. And maybe this one is again at 2 seconds. It takes 2 seconds to fade it in. So we'll just, this is close to 2 seconds. We'll pull it down and drop it. And just for the sake, so you can see how to change these fades if it doesn't suit your taste, let's try a fade. And at the end, let's make it a second. We'll make it short and see how we like it. I don't think we're going to like it, so I think I'll put it there. Now I'm going to drag and drop this at the end. All right, so let's play it from the very beginning. So we're going to hit play, and just be aware as it comes in if you're happy with the way it looks. It's really not too bad, that fade out being fast, but let's say we want to change it, make it fade out a little bit slower for the Sunrise at Willow Creek. All I have to do is click on that box and it highlights it, and then I can right click and this little box will come up, and then I can either expand this box for the duration, or I could, if I didn't like the fade, I could try fade with black, and we could use that and see which we liked better. So that's an option. We'll just come down here and we're going to expand this to about maybe a little bit longer. Let's try, yeah, let's try right in here. If you can't go far enough, because you notice it doesn't go real far beyond that, maybe just a second more, you can always trash it and redo it. So if it won't go as long as you'd like it to be on this little pop-up window, then just trash it and replace it. But we'll say that seems pretty good, so I just click out here and we're good to go. And so now we'll play it and see how we like it from the beginning. Fades in, fades in. I actually think longer times look a little bit more dramatic. So I think I'd like to see it a little bit longer. I don't think I'm happy with, I thought I'd be happy with this amount of fade in, but let's try doing this one slightly longer. Let's bump it up to, let's try about there. And let's go to the other one and try lengthening it also. Can't go much longer without starting over. So let's go back to the beginning. And I got, let's see if I like it a little better. I think that's pretty good. I'm happy with it. You may be thinking I'd like to see something else happen, and that's fine. But for me, I thought this looked pretty good. I was pretty happy with it. But if you're creating your own, and I hope you start this as soon as we get finished with this series of videos that get you through this intermediate idea and intermediate tutorial, I should say, and you go ahead and try your own hand at it, then you can make some adjustments. You can make them longer, shorter, and see what you like. Try the different fades, see which one you like the best. But for right now, I think we're good with this, so I'm going to cut away, and I will see you back in part 2. Hi, this is Jackie, and we're back with part 2 of our intermediate video tutorial. And in part 1, we set up our title slides and we have them fading in and out. And we also have our timeline pixel layer fading in. And so at this point, we're ready to decide what we want to do next. So we're going to place what they call keyframe markers along our video pixel layer. And so that will tell the picture how to change as it progresses through time. So right now we have our fade in complete. So we're going to move our marker, which is what I call that line, red line with the blue tab. We're going to move it over to where our fade in is finished. And that finished at about 9 seconds. So we need to decide how long we are going to hold at this point, or do we start the transformation immediately? In this example, I think we'll hold for about 1 second. So I'm going to move it over to 10 seconds. And at this point, I need to make a marker so it knows where to start the change. So if I go to the layer that says Tetons, there's an arrow to the left. If I click on that, drop down, you'll see it says transformation. I want to hit that stopwatch, and when I do, it will drop a transform keyframe marker right there. And you can see it did. It's that little yellow diamond right at the base of the line. So we are now need to decide what we do next. So how far or where do we want to move, and how long does it need to take? So we want to move to about halfway into the picture, just prior to getting to the big mountain, the biggest mountain in the picture. And I think for that distance of time, it should take about 15 seconds. We're at 10 seconds now, add 15, we're at 25 seconds. So I pulled my marker over to 25 seconds. And now I need to move my picture to reflect what I want it to do. So you move the marker first, and then you can use the transform tool to move your marker, to transform your picture or move your picture to the point you want. You can also use the move tool. So either will work. But we want to move in a straight and level line across the image. So I'm going to hold down my shift key. I'm going to click. I'm going to drag to the left till I get to the point where I want it to stop. Okay, there's the big mountain. I'm going to back off a little. I'm going to release it. When I'm happy with my move, I'm going to hit either the check mark at the top of the frame, or I'm going to hit my enter or return key, and that will accept the transform. And it also will drop a keyframe marker on our line at the point that we are. Okay, so now we've hit the check mark to accept it. And you can see there's a little yellow diamond right at where we clicked on it, where our marker is. So now we need to decide what our next move is and how long it will take to do it. I would like to now zoom in on that mountain so that our picture is a little closer. And I think it should take about, say, 10 to 15 seconds to move in. And now, of course, we move our marker first, and now we do the transform. And yes, I know my screen just turned black. I don't know why it does that. Occasionally it does, and sometimes it doesn't. But we're ready to do the transform. So believe me, that picture's still there. It didn't disappear. So we did a Command or Control T. I've got my transform tool on. Now I need to zoom out so I can see all those handles. So I'm going to hit a Command or Control 0. And now I'm able to grab those handles on one of the corners and pull it out until I'm at the look that I want. So I think if we center it about here, that looks good. I think I'm zoomed in about the way I want it. Maybe I can go a little bit farther, just a little tighter on that mountain for just a few seconds or a second when we get there. So, okay, I think I'm pretty happy with the way it looks here. Center it now. All right, so now we're going to accept it by hitting that check mark, or we can hit the enter key. And you'll notice it dropped another yellow diamond at the base of our timeline. So we're ready to make the next this point. And I think I would like to hold. So we're going to drop another marker about a second from the first one. So I'm going to pull the marker over to 36. Since we didn't move the image at all, I need to come over to the tab and hit in the transform, hit that yellow diamond, and it placed it there. So now we're ready to move on to our next move, which is to zoom away so that we get back to where we were prior to zooming in on the big mountain. So how long should it take to zoom out? And I would say, you know, about the same amount of time we did last time. So around 10 seconds is what I'm going to give it. And you can make adjustments accordingly. And it all depends on how far you're zooming out. So we're going to hit a Command or Control T. And then I want my handle showing. So Command or Control 0. And I'm going to pull in on those handles until I think I am showing about the same amount of image as I was before. So I'm looking at my foreground, I'm looking at the head space above my mountain as I pull in those handles and kind of manipulate it in place. And then I want to center my mountain because that's where it was. So I'm going to pull until I think it looks the way it did. Now notice as I pull this handle, I'm changing my aspect ratio, and I don't want to take a chance that I've done that. So I'm going to go up and hit the no transform and start over. So occasionally you'll get it where it's moving and changing the aspect ratio with just holding the corner, so you can give it a test. If it's holding the aspect ratio, then you can just pull in. If it happens to be moving around, then you will want to hold down the shift key and then pull in on a corner, and it will continue to hold that aspect ratio the way it was from the beginning. So once again, now I've pulled it around, I've kind of gotten it back to the position that I think it was prior to the zoom in. I've accepted it now. I'm going to bring this picture bigger so that you can see better. And now I need to decide if I'm going to hold here again or if I immediately want to start panning to the right. When we pan, we can either use the Move tool by hitting the V key or going up to our toolbar and getting the Move tool, or we can use the Transform. We do need to figure out how long it should take us to move across our image. I think it was shorter distance. Let's go 11 seconds or so. On here. So I move my marker in place. Now I've got my transform tool. I hold down the shift key and I'm going to move it, pull it to the left until I get to that far end. I don't think I need to go that far. I pull it back a little bit and I accept it. And it dropped another keyframe marker. So at this point, do we hold before we zoom out? Because that's the next thing I want to do, is zoom out so that I can see the entire panorama at one time. So I'm going to hold for a second, and I pulled my marker over first. Now I go over and click on my yellow diamond. Okay, so now you can see we've set another keyframe marker, the little yellow diamond under our timeline. So now we're ready to zoom out, and we need to decide how much time it will take us to zoom out. And I know we went to a black screen again on our video, but it'll come back in just a second. It's my computer setup or whatever. But anyway, so I think it should be about 10 seconds to zoom out to that distance. So first thing I need to do is pull that marker to 10 seconds over from my last keyframe marker. And now I'm going to go a Command or Control T, Command or Control 0 to zoom out so I can get to those handles. Now I'm going to push them in and I'm going to check to see if I get any movement. And since I did, I need to undo that movement I just made. Hold down the shift, bring up my corner until I have the edge of my image equal the edge of the canvas. And you can see the black area underneath my image. So when I know the sides are lined up the way I want them, I need to now center it from top to bottom. So I'm going to click and drag it into place, and I'm just eyeballing it. And that looks about right. So once I get it to where I think it looks centered, I'm going to accept it. I can pull it out a little bit if I feel like I may have zoomed in too far. Again, I'm going to center it just by eyeball. If it looks good, or if you're having a hard time, you can use the arrow keys to nudge it a little bit, as long as it's still in the transform mode. Once I've liked it, now I'm going to hit my check mark or hit the enter key and accept it. And there we have it. So I'm going to zoom in so you can see it. Now you notice it dropped the keyframe marker, so that's good. Now I need to, I'm kind of playing it now from the beginning to see how it lines out. It looks good, it's fading in good. Okay, so now it's zooming in, now it held, now it's going to pan across. So basically what I'm doing is I'm just checking to see that it's actually doing all the things that I expect it to do. Did I mess up? Did I forget to put a marker in? Did I accidentally delete one? So I'm just watching to see that it's doing what I have wanted it to do. Now it's building a preview, so we're not going at real time, and it'll only build a preview for 30 seconds. So sadly, I can't take it all the way across my entire timeline in one shot because it will only hold that preview for 30 seconds. So just as I get to the 30 seconds, I'm going to stop it if I want to view the preview. If I don't care to view the preview, I'm just making sure it's doing its thing, I can let it go ahead and play. But no, it will not be at real time as it goes across here. So okay, it held, it's now zooming out, so that's what I wanted it to do. So all is good so far. I know it's a long, slow process, and depending on how long your timeline is, it can be longer, but at least you know that it's working. And that's what you want to do, because when you're finished with your video, it's going to take quite a while to render this. So you don't want to find out you've made a mistake and have to wait another hour for it to render. And just kind of an FYI, as we're watching this progress across here, some of these renders will take an hour or more. It just depends on how much information you have for it to render. You know, when it was the small one and it was short and there was only the video timeline on there, it did it pretty quickly. But as we start to go through this one and I add music and I've added that title frame and some fades, all that stuff takes time when it renders. When we get to part 3 of this video series, we will work on the fade out at the end of our timeline and we will add music. So join me in part 3. See you soon. Hi, it's Jackie, and we're back for part 3 of our intermediate tutorial on how to change a still image into a short video. And in this portion, we're going to add an audio track to our video to make it more interesting. And we're going to do a little bit of clipping in the middle so that we can adjust our music. So let's get started. We have it set up from part 1 and 2. We've done the title frame and we've done our keyframe markers on our timeline. So now let's get into the video part of it, or the audio part. If we look at the bottom of our timeline panel, we'll see this audio track, and there's nothing in it right now. It's blank, and that came up when you initially clicked create video timeline. So it was added at the beginning, but it's still empty, and it has been the whole time. So how do we go about adding in music, and what kind of things do we need to be concerned with? Well, the first thing you need to be concerned with is the fact of whether you're going to use this video online in any way or sell it in any way, because if so, you need to be worried about copyright infringement on your music. Just because you bought an iTunes album doesn't mean you have the right to make money off of it by using it on a video that you might sell. So you need to be aware and check into those rules more efficiently than I just told you, because I am not very well versed in them, but you do need to be cautious of this. So for this tutorial, I have looked for some royalty-free music to use. And adding music, the longest amount of time this video takes is searching for the music if you don't know the song that you might want to put with it. But I did locate a free source of music, especially if you're going to use YouTube, and that is YouTube Audio, and there's a bunch of audio clips in there that you can download for free. I'm going to go down to this layers panel, and I'm going to click on the little arrow next to the musical notes. It says add audio. That's what I want to do. And so now it opens up my folder system, and I'm going to go into music, and I've made a little folder with my YouTube music, and I'm going to select the one that I had chosen for this particular video, and I'm going to hit open, and you'll notice it opens a green line now on our panel. And so now what I need to be worried about is what it sounds like. So let's give it a listen and see how it sounds with the video that we have so far. So I'm going to move my marker back to the first frame, and I'm going to start it from here, and I'll give you a listen as we do this. Okay, so that's what it sounds like, and I thought it sounded pretty good. So let's look at what we need to do. It's got a title of Christmas Homecoming on it, and you'll see why in just a minute. It sounds more Christmassy later on, but I thought it sounded pretty good for this. It's kind of a majestic sounding song, so I'm going to continue to play from this point and hear what it sounds like. Now, just as we hit 30 seconds, it started to have jingle bells in the background. And I didn't really want to hear jingle bells in the background of my video, or at least at this point. So I would like to change the video a little bit, or excuse me, the audio. So how can I do that? Well, I need to be particular about what it's doing at this point. So right here, I'm bringing it back to 30 seconds because I think that's about where the music changed. And I'll let you listen again as I try to figure it out too. So it's just slightly past 31 maybe. I'm going to change my scale so I can get a little bit more precise with this. Scroll over. I'm sorry I have to listen to this several times till I get it, but I do. You will too. It was right there. So I'm going to cut it just before that point. What do I mean? Well, I'm going to bring my marker back. I stopped it right here. I'm going to bring it back to about here, so 30.8, and hopefully it'll be in the right spot. If it's not, I'll redo it. So I want to make sure just my audio line is highlighted. Right now my video line and my audio line is highlighted. See the white line around each one of them? I'm going to click again just on the green line so it's the only one highlighted. And now I want to cut my audio track right where my line is. So I put my line in the place that I want to cut it. Then I come up to this panel and hit the scissors, and you'll notice it cut it in two. So I want to eliminate this last half for right now, or I can put it on another audio track. So one or the other. I'm going to go ahead and just get rid of it. Well, right now I have both of them highlighted. I only want to get rid of this second half. So first off, I think before I totally delete it, I'm going to make sure that my cut is in the right place. So I'm going to click on the last half of the song. You'll notice now that only this side is highlighted, and now I'm going to click again and drag it to the right. Why am I doing this? I want to hear what it sounds like where it cuts off. So I'm going to back up my marker just a little bit and listen to it again, and I will bring you into this. All right, I heard no jingle bells on the end of it, so I think we're good with that. I'm going to go ahead and delete the one that's highlighted, the one I cut off. So I'm going to hit delete on my keyboard, and it goes away. Well, now I don't have enough song for the entire video that I have playing, so I'd like to bring another audio track in, and I'm going to just bring the same track right back in. So what do I need to do? I need to go over here to this arrow again, click that arrow. I have an option now of either adding audio or a new audio track. I'm going to add a new track because I may want to overlap it a little bit. So I'm going to add a new track. it places it right below there. It's still nothing in it at this point, but I have a new track of music where I can put music. So I'm going to hit that arrow one more time, add audio. It will take me back into my folder system. I'm in music already because I was here before. I'm going to hit the same song. I'm going to open it. It's now pasted it at the end, excuse me, at the line below the first one. And I want it to start where this other one left off. So I need to click, because it's highlighted, I click and drag it, and I can drag it to the end or almost to the end. I may want a little overlap so it sounds better, but do I even want the beginning of this track? Because it had kind of an intro to it, and I don't want it to sound like it's starting over. I kind of want to make it sound like it blends into the next part of the song. So I'm going to play it and find where that intro ends, and then I'm going to cut it at that point also. So I'll back it up just a little bit farther and hit play. Okay, there was a transition there. I don't know if you heard it because it was close to when I turned it on. Let's try again so I can see if I can find the right spot. Okay, it was right about there is when that sound was going to change. So I'm going to clip it. I need to bring it back just a little bit farther. And because this is highlighted, this is the line we're working with, I'm going to hit the scissors. And now I'm going to click on this part, the part I cut off, and I'm going to delete it by hitting the delete key or the backspace key on a PC. I'm now going to highlight the one I kept, and I'm going to push it forward so there's a slight overlap. And now let's listen to what happens. Okay, so it was very abrupt and it didn't sound great. So let's see if we can change that to sound a little bit better. And I think if we add a fade on the end of our music, it might help us move into the other one. Let's try a fade on this one without a fade on the other and see what happens. We may need to add a fade to both. Well, before, when we added a fade, we came up here and used this one. But for music, you don't do that. So for music, I'm going to highlight this top line. And if I right click on it, I get this little window open. And you'll notice it says fade in or fade out. Well, we're at the end, so we want to fade away. And we just need to decide how long we want that fade to be. We'll try about 1.5 seconds. And once I have that dialed in, I'll just click back on the screen. It'll go away. And now let's play it and see how it sounds. So let me get the microphone so you can hear. Let's try something different. So we've got the fade on it, but maybe what we need to do is just simply move this line of music a little bit farther to the right. So I'm going to click on it to highlight it. So it's the one I'm working with. I'm now going to click and drag it just a little bit. So maybe the timing is off just a little. And I'm going to pull back again, and I will give you a good listen as I go. Hit play. That's better. It probably could have been a little bit longer at the beginning, maybe. Let's go ahead and try a fade in. Maybe that'll adjust it. I'm not sure if I want a fade in, or maybe I need my fade out to be a little longer on the first piece. But let's try a fade in. So I'm going to right click on this line and this time hit fade in, and I want it to be really short, and it's not going to want to go down real far. So it's only 1 second, but I'm not sure I've got enough space for that. We'll try it. And I'm going to hit play. Actually, I don't think that's too bad. I'm going to let it go for now. Now you know how to manipulate it. So now when you're working with yours, you can work at it a little at a time to get it so that you think it sounds like a nice smooth bleed from one to the other. Now, if we move across the screen by scrolling over, look how long the green line is compared to the purple line. I don't need all that length. So let's pull this back. So I'm going to just hover till I get that icon, and I'm going to click and pull it back a little at a time till I'm back where I want to be. And now I'm going to leave it hang out a little bit beyond my purple line for a minute. We will come back to this and get it all smoothed away here in a few minutes, but right now we've got it in view. So let's work on this. Right now we'll move our cursor down here. So we're at full view now of our picture. But if I pull this to the right, it just immediately drops off. It's just a blunt ending. And I think it will look better if we have a fade out at the end. So I want to fade out from our video to black. So let's go back to our fade for the timeline part of it. I'm going to click on it. I want to fade with black. And when it's at the end like this, I kind of like them to be longer. So I will move it to about 4 seconds. That's close enough for me. I'm going to now click and drag this in place. That's how you place it. Till I get that black box, I'm going to release it. So you'll notice as soon as it comes into full view, it's already starting to dim. And that may be too close. So maybe what we need to do is extend this timeline just a little bit farther. So now it sits at full view for just a second or two before it starts to fade away. And you can have it sit just a little longer if you'd like to. So we'll do that and see how that works. Now let's go ahead and play this from this end point towards the end of our music and see what our music is doing at the very end, because we'd really like it if we could have it feel like it should be an ending point. And when we find that point in the music, that's when we'll know where we want to put the end of our video portion. And I'm going to go ahead and include one more thing, is a fade out at the end of our music. So let's give it a listen and see how we like the sound. Okay, it was very abrupt, and that's because we have no fade out at the end. So let's come down and highlight our line. Now let's right click and let's do a fade out. And again, let's do it for maybe we'll do it for 4.67 seconds and see how it sounds. So I'm going to bring my marker down so we're only listening to the end part here. And let's try it one more time. I felt like the music should have gone out just a little farther, like it just needed to hit the next few notes to make it sound a little bit better. So because we don't have to keep it in any window of time, I'm going to go ahead and pull it out and see if it sounds better to me as it ends off, as it trails off. So let's pull this out just a little bit more. It's taking that fade with it, so that should be fine. I just want to listen to the tailing off of this music, so I think we're okay. We'll start here. I like that better. So I'm happy with that, and you'll notice that the screen has been black since it faded out. Now, if you don't want it to be black for that amount of time, then you could pull this out and you could look at the picture for a little bit longer. So we'll do that. Okay, so we are ready to say we're finished with this video. So we're finished with the intermediate version. Now, I will tell you in the next version, where I give you a few more ideas that you can use to create your videos, we're going to go and fill in this blank space at the end, and we're going to add a credit to it. So you'll see that in our next video. So I want you to tune in for that, but we're not quite ready to end this one yet. So let's go in, and we need to save this somehow. So how do we save a video? Well, we're going to go up to File. We're going to come down to Export, and then we're going to go to Render Video, and it will pop up. And so we can go ahead and save this out, and we can title it whatever we want to. And I did want to give you a little disclaimer. If you notice that my settings were slightly different in part 3 than they were in part 2, that's because I had like a technical problem and I had to redo it, and I didn't know exactly where my stops were and all that stuff. So I went ahead, redid it to that point. It's very similar in length and in stop size and all that stuff. So anyway, if it looks slightly different, that's why. And now I want to pick the folder where I'm going to have it go. So I'm going to say I would like it to go into panning videos. We'll use that, and we'll say this is our latest video, and we will add it to that. So I'm going to choose, and now I'm going to look at what else I need. I could have created a new folder had I wanted to right here by checking this, titling it right here. We want to make sure if yours do not come up like this, in these, you need to have these particular criteria in your boxes. So if it doesn't, just hit these down arrows so you find the one you need. And we have a format of H.264. Preset is high quality, and your HDTV 1080p here with a 1920 by 1080 here. And this is also at almost 30 frames per second. These will probably just fill in for you if you have use the same process that I have told you, but just in case they didn't, these are what you need. Now we're ready to hit render. So it's going to do its thing. It's going to take it a few minutes. We're going to be looking at this progress bar for a short amount of time. It may just be 5 minutes, it may be 10 or 15. It depends what you have in your video that you're exporting. So you don't have to sit here and watch the progress bar go across. I will tune out, bring you back in to see the very end, the final product, and I want you to make sure that when you are done with this video that you tune in and you find out what we have going in the tutorials part 3, and so you'll get some more advanced settings. So see you then. Bye for now.